Good morning, everybody. Russ on the West End Network. Hope you're all safe and well. Bin day in the Budden household. Excitement. Not much excitement here, obviously, after yesterday's game against Molyneux. A real Jekyll and Hyde, wasn't it? A real Jekyll and Hyde. Not just on the pitch, but I think off the pitch as well. As I mentioned yesterday, I thought we would definitely there would be a step change in terms of the starting 11, and boy was it. We found out afterwards that Kudus had a knock and had a late fitness test apparently, and obviously failed that, so was deemed not well enough to start, or not within the squad actually, with Luis Guilherme getting his first start, which a lot of fans were excited about. The fact is we had two 19-year-olds and a 20-year-old in the side, which is the oldest side in the Premier League, so it showed some sort of step change, and obviously Evan Ferguson starting as well, which I think a lot of people thought would happen. And I still believe that the Graham Potter setup doesn't work without a target man, without a striker. And I think second half showed to me how important that is. And I thought Fulkrug came on and had a point to prove clearly. And for the next 8 games, I hope he sort of stays fit and will continue to have that point to prove. Because the first half was dire, wasn't it? I mean, the fact was we literally played with no defensive midfielders, and unsurprisingly, a Wolves side which has got 2 very strong midfielders, both former West Ham linked players, and Andre and Gomez, ran the midfield and ran through the midfield continually, and it was just. It was so plain to see, and I thought, I felt sorry for Louis, and I felt sorry for Evan as well. I mean, there was football is all based on fine margins. If that ball across from Bowen was half a metre more towards the goal, Evan would have scored, and then you might have seen a sliding doors moment, and then he'd be full of confidence. And it's those fine margins, and he just didn't get the rub of the green at all for us yesterday, which didn't help by it. The fact was we just couldn't get any sense of cohesion together. Which is the issue when you play people, obviously 2 people making their starting debuts really, in Louis and Evan. So it was frustrating, very frustrating, and obviously the goal being a deflected goal as well. To be fair, I mean, I think Wolves, did they hit the post, or there was a close shot, I think, in the second half, right at the end of the second half. But to be honest, Ariola, I don't remember him making much of a save, many saves. I thought we kept them reasonably at bay. I know there's some criticism about him, about Potter and the back 3, but to be honest, I still, a team is built off a strong defence, and we could be expansive and play and score 3 goals, and I think in the second half, it proved how defensively open we were when we went to the 4 at the back. I know we were chasing the game and stuff. So for me, the 3 at the back does make it stronger defensively. The flip side is you probably lose with one midfielder to be a defensive midfielder, but we or don't play any. We don't play any as we did in the first half. I think second half, he made the right decisions, the right choices. Obviously, it does seem that Todibo wasn't fit enough to start as well, and we know Mavi's fit. He'd been playing. We know that Potter wouldn't have played him unless he had to. We've heard that in terms of reading between the lines when he's had press conferences. I questioned the first half whether players were on the beach, hence the thumbnail. But in essence, it was more of a Jekyll and Hyde performance. Second half, he brought on the right players at the right time. I thought Fulkrug looked not sharp. He's not 100% sharp, but you could just see, again, not necessarily, but his link-up play. The amount of times he had the ball and flicked it on, and that's the role that Potter likes his striker to have, is that sort of ability to bring in players to the game. It would have been nice to have seen him maybe with someone with pace like Guilherme the other side of him, rather than necessarily Soler, in terms of being able to flick it onto him to run on, because really, we only really had Bowen as the main outlet, really, and I think he was then double teamed pretty much, and then that sort of nullified that right hand side. A couple of times we sort of managed to do the run around with Wan-Bissaka, and that worked well. But you could see it. For me, I know you don't become a shit player overnight, and I don't think Füllkrug's a shit player. And when he had the ball up, he did that little drag back to release Souček, he probably should have done better. Anything that was good in the second half came from his play. Then there was the header, a phenomenal header. 16 yards out, almost looped it over Sarr, but hit the crossbar, and then anyone apart from someone who's just come on, which happened with Emerson, anyone else would have drilled that rather than trying to do a little Di Canio bicycle, little rainbow kick. But the second half we did see. I think also that for me the main thing was we had that CDM, we had that Alvarez role, which we didn't have in the first half, and that nullified a lot of what Wolves were trying to do. Granted, Wolves didn't have to push; they were already winning, so they could soak up the pressure. But it was a much more enjoyable second half than it was in the first half. And then I re-questioned my ideas. It seemed that they want, the first half we didn't seem to want it. There wasn't that many sort of real oofs, real sort of good tackles and things like that. Whereas the second half for me, we seem to have woken up. And now I know proverbially we never play well after the international break. That was a very poor first half. I think a draw would have been a fair result. I don't think we deserved it across the 90 minutes to have won the game. I think a draw would have been. I think we had by far the better second half, and they had by far the better first half. But we couldn't get it in the old onion bag, and hasn't been like us recently. We've always seemed to have a goal. When Füllkrug put through Souček, I thought he would have just smashed. It was a poor shot from him, which is unusual. Same as Emerson. Why try and do the spectacular? Just drill it in, and we could have come away from one with a strong point, because I think we would have probably. And you never know. We would have been in the ascendancy. But hey, if buts and maybes, if my auntie had bollocks, she'd be my uncle, wouldn't she? Really. It does slightly worry me about what happens at Bournemouth at London Stadium. I was reading some fan commentary about the game and some fans' review, and they were saying, one of them I read or listened to, I can't remember which it was, said, we should start the way we played. We finished the game yesterday, and from an entertainment perspective, yes. However, we were so open defensively. If Wolves really had pressed us when there was times in the game where literally, I think Semedo was on the left and he had so much space when he had the ball, and a Bournemouth side with Cliver and Simiano and all these types of players. If we played like that, it'd be so open. It'd be a cricket score. I really do. So I would assume that we start with 3 at the back to make sure we don't concede. Firstly, I know it didn't really work out yesterday, but again, for me, deflected goal. These fine margins which define games and define managers' seasons and define managers' careers. And the second half, it's hard to justify a performance when you've lost. And there'll be people say, "Oh, we were crap." Yeah, we were crap. First half, we were crap. Second half, we were better. But granted, there's mitigating circumstances, and that Wolves didn't need to do anything. They could have, but we just seemed a bit more defensively, not defensively assured, because I thought more attackingly assured. We were on the front foot a lot more. We were pressing because we needed to, because we needed the ball, and it was more like a function. Now, yes, if we had that same mentality, but I think for me, the back three is okay, but you need an Alvarez there. I think we're defensively a lot stronger than we were under Lopetegui, and towards the end of the Moyes era, Wolves would have probably gone 2-3-0 up at half time, because we just crumbled when we conceded, and particularly a deflected goal as well. As I said, we only didn't have much to do. I think there was a stat came up midway for the second half. I think Wolves has had 2 shots on target all game. We'd only had 1, so it was hardly a rousing victory. But I think now we've got an opportunity. I mean, we're going to play a very good Bournemouth side. a Bournemouth side who have got their tails up. It slightly worries me about what could happen. Not necessarily, we could realistically lose the game, but it's the adverse effect it would have on the fan base. I hate this expression. It's got this long pre-season, but the thing is, you still need to pick up points. You still need to keep the fans on board with you, because there are some fans who say, like, give him time. I'm the same. Give him time. When he's his own player. But those voices will become quieter and quieter if we don't see points in the big. If we finish above Spurs, by the end of the season, it's bragging rights, really, isn't it? But there's not really much else to play for. All we can play for is if we see more of that second half, more of that intensity. Not necessarily, I don't really, whether it's 4 at the back, 3 at the back, I'm not bothered, but it's the intensity I want to see. We can be have a defensive solid side and still be intensive in terms of the high press. You can still have, that's what I want to see more of. It was quite pedestrian that first half. Passing was pedestrian. There wasn't many offer. I think Arietta probably had more touches of the ball than Jared Bowen in the first half, in all honesty. But I think that second half for me question didn't answer the question whether players on the beach already. I don't think they are. Some maybe. Some maybe have made a decision what they're going to be doing this, whether they're going to be moving on, they're running down their contracts, they're not going to be, but none of them were playing yesterday, apart from Aaron Cresswell, who I know he gets criticised, but he didn't make. I don't remember him making a mistake that first half. When he plays that left of the back three, I think he's quite assured, and he's coaching. He's working, developing with Ollie as well. I thought Ollie didn't do anything to harm his credentials. Semedo had a run of him a couple of times, but I thought he got forward quite a bit as well. Wan-Bissaka again just shows how important he is. I think if we didn't have, no disrespect, but if we had Vladimir Soufal in that position yesterday, we'd have lost that game far much more convincingly, in my opinion. I thought Aaron was defensively very strong. Likes to get ahead likes to get forward, but those one-on-ones, how many times those one-on-ones, he just did a little hook tackle, slide tackle around and just won the ball. Really impressive. I thought JWP huffed and puffed. I don't mind him there, but I don't like him there with someone else who's I would have preferred personally JWP alongside an Alvarez in that bit, but we don't know what state Alvarez came back with from the Mexico, from Kofkan. So I can give a pass on that. But then by putting Paqueta there, I think you nullify what's good with Paqueta. I want Paqueta doing damage up top. I don't want Paqueta having to trap back, and I want him being an attacker. Reminds me a little bit of Carlos Tevez when he first joined, and all he wanted to do was just be everywhere, and it nullified his game. I think it was Curbs told him to just stay up front. As for me, Paqueta's more dangerous in that final third. Freeing those balls through, looking for the different passes as well, not just the free passes or out to the side. He'll look for a scoop pass or something which just puts defence on notice. But anyway, let me know what you think. I'm pretty sure I'm going to get lots of interesting comments about the game. But first half crap, second half better. But still C-. Needs to do more. Needs to do a lot more. Anyway, take care, everyone. I think Holly will be here with the daily and the Hammers headlines a bit later on today. And we'll see you all soon. Also, tomorrow, don't forget, it's 9 p.m. Should have an X-Hammer on. Channel members, if you go into the community tab on the YouTube, your opportunity to ask questions. Please submit some questions, because it'll be nice. Great opportunity to ask a former West Ham captain some really interesting questions. Take care. Stay safe. Stay warm. Stay humble. Happy bin day. Much love. Bye-bye.